Hi, my name's Craig Matkin. I'd like to give a little bit of an update on the AT1 transients in Alaska. They're these unique killer whales that are on the brink of extinction and that we may have a few lessons to learn from. Our photo identification project up here in Alaska at Prince William Sound and Kenai Fjords is where this study is focused. Began back 38 years ago. And yeah, we were running out of little skiffs back then. We have different boats now, but yeah, my son, this is what gives me some perspective, is my son who's on there. This is early in the study, is now an orthopedic surgeon, and a very different world we live in. So I wanted to first talk about how these animals have a very limited range. These AT1 or Chugach transients, as Eva called them in her book, Integrate Silence. These Chugach transients are very limited. Prince William Sound is where they center their range, and then down into Kenai Fjords, really just the northern part of Kenai Fjords in this region. So a very limited range. They've never been photographed anywhere else. And the relationships of these AT1 or Chugach transients to the rest of the transients on the west coast is unique, and here they are. This is with nuclear DNA, looking at the female inheritance, and you can see they're off on their own little arm here. This is genetic distance that is indicated by these lines, and but then if you look at both the male and female inheritance, they're way off. Here, very, very unique genetically. This is from biopsy samples that we've taken over the years. So there's no question about how unique they are from these other populations of transients, like the West Coast transients that you have down there in Puget Sound and Southeast Alaska, and the Gulf of Alaska transients, which are out in the Gulf here northern Gulf of Alaska. Harbor seals are the big deal for these animals as far as the prey goes. We were a little slow in figuring it out because we knew they'd kill something, but you don't see much sign of it. They do it, it happens really fast, unless you've got an aerial view like this where you can see them hauling the seal away. So we had to learn to look for oil slicks, and with the oil slicks we find bits of skin and could get genetic ID on it. But first we had trouble looking at predation many years ago. So here's a chart of what they basically eat, and there's harbor seals, and then there's unidentified marine mammals. This is probably mostly all harbor seals that we just couldn't get prey samples for, so we put them in the unknown category. And then Dall's porpoise is a lot more obvious when they kill a Dall's porpoise, and they've shifted over the years to Dall's porpoise is what's happened. They've shifted quite a bit as harbor seals declined. Harbor seals now are starting to increase again, but so they increased their take of Dall's porpoise. I've got to play some calls of these guys because they are like no other killer whale calls you'll ever hear, and it's like a language from a native tribe going extinct, and there's some beautiful native languages in Alaska. The Eyak tribe that happens to be the same geographic area as these AT1 transients has a unique and beautiful language, and these transients, these Chugach or AT1 transients, also have a unique language. Eva did a lot of work with this and looked at the calls and the context of their behaviors. I won't go into that, but I just need to play this call, a series of calls. Yeah, they're haunting, and they're just, to me, they speak of the sound, and they're so loud. There are these contact calls, is what I was playing, that allow them to get back together, and it's incredible. It's nothing like it anywhere else I've ever looked at killer whales. So the population decline. The Exxon Valdez oil spill was a big part of the decline, the recent decline anyway. 9 deaths, right following the oil spill of what were 22 animals in the population, very small to begin with. The whales were observed in contact with the oil. They probably inhaled oil was the main way that it killed them. But there's also the ingestion of oiled seals. They were really easy prey, and they were eating oiled seals all that first summer after the spill. The other problem we have, environmental contaminants, PCBs and DDTs. Those are declining, not as fast as we'd hoped, but also now there's the flame retardants and other contaminants that are potentially another problem. So contaminants, although DDT's been banned and PCB's banned, there's others that have come along. And these contaminants are 15 to 20 times higher in these transients and residents, and they have a potential for reproductive effects and interfering with reproduction, which has been a problem for these AT1 transients. They haven't had a calf since 1984. There's a harbor seal decline that happened between 1970 and 2002. It was exacerbated by the oil spill, but now they're gradually recovering. That's good news anyway, but they're not up to the levels at all that they were back in the 60s. Most of the AT1 or Chugach transients now forage for the main part in these glacial fjords because of the concentration of harbor seals on the ice there, and the fact they're the only transients we've seen that seem to forage up in glacial fjords. Even though we have other transients, the Gulf of Alaska transients up here. And this is what's happened with the population. It's gone from the 22 animals at the beginning of the study and a new calf to down to 7. We lost more animals after the spill. These were older males, yeah, some of them were seen in the spill, so it may have been effects that were carried over the years. But yeah, it's been 7 animals in the group now for over a decade, and it's amazing. None of them have died. Unfortunately, the females are probably all too old to have calves, and for some reason they just never reproduced after the spill. So sad story there, but we get to see them still occasionally, and mainly around the glaciers. And the tour boats, of course, are really anxious to see them, which is, I come now to what can we do, or what have we learned from this, and what kind of mitigation can we have? Well, the reduced use of new contaminants, that's a big one. And for these transient animals that feed at the top of the food chain, contaminants are a problem, and especially in ocean environments. And then address climate change, which impacts primary productivity in the Gulf. We've had some really warm years lately, and it's really impeded recovery of harbor seals because the prey fish are all knocked down when we have these, what they call the blob effect, when you have warming, these warming years. And so when primary productivity drops down, obviously it's going to go all the way up the food chain and impact these whales as well as others. And then education of tour boat and other vessel operators. The vessel, there's a lot of tour boats, 120,000 plus people go through Kenai Fjords each year, and they'd all love to see the AT1s who are occasionally there, and we try to make sure that they're given a lot of space, along with all the guidelines for other vessel, or for other killer whales as well, and other whales. So those are the main things. I invite everybody to read Integrate Silence, Eva's book on the early days of this study, and what it means, what extinction means. And I think that's something that we need to sit back and consider, because these animals, as you heard from the calls, are so unique, and the genetic information they carry is so unique. And not to carry this forward, it just reduces the variability in the overall world of killer whales in a way that You don't know what the future is going to bring, and genetic variability and is important, and all these smaller populations may be the answer to future issues that they may face, and the variability and potential to adapt that comes with that. So I think we just need to sit back and realize that the extinction of these tribes, just like I think extinction of some native tribes and some of what they had to offer, and their culture at any rate, has been detrimental to our moving forward, as we're realizing now, and we look at the way we live in the world. So I just invite you to think about that and perhaps read Into Great Silence if you haven't already. So that's, I think, what I want to leave it at. I'm hopeful these animals will live a long, long lifetime, and we'll see. To see them at all is a treat, and I thank you very much for listening.